Shalom, shalom, shalom to you guys that are watching today and on YouTube, if YouTube allows me to upload this. um, it's been a while. Feels like it's been a while. I think it's been like a couple weeks. But we'll get started in about 30 seconds. 30 seconds. We'll be going everywhere. Not a lot of places today in the Word. We got some things in Deuteronomy, some stuff in Genesis, Jubilees, Jasher. What else? Let's see here. A little bit of Ezekiel, some Proverbs. Yeah. And of course I have some screenshots, of course, to share. So oh yeah, we'll be everywhere basically, so so I'll go ahead and get started in about 20 seconds. All right, I'll go ahead and pray in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Dear Abba, we just thank you just for allowing us to be in this moment, to be able to study your word, to be able to understand more and gain more understanding in your word, in this walk that we're walking out and living. Abba, I ask that you just continue to cover us and just push us towards the right ways that we need to be walking in, that we may correct the mistakes that our ancestors made, and that we may walk in your in righteousness and your fear and your wisdom. I ask that you just continue to allow these studies to help not only myself and my family, but also others, brothers and sisters who are seeking you to continue to grow in you. I ask that you continue to allow your spirit to speak, and not from my own mindset, but your mindset, your spirit set, your heart set, and that we just continue to walk in your ways always, and not man's ways. I acknowledge your son, and I thank you for what he has done and what role he has played in allowing us to continue to grow closer unto him and unto you, in spirit and in truth, so that way when he returns that we are ready for the bridegroom. And I ask that you just continue to forgive us of the things that we fall short in, that we may learn how not to fall short and pursue the path of righteousness in the right ways. And we just love you, and we just thank you for all things. In the name of your son, I pray. Amen. 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 All right, y'all. So, welcome to a start of a series. This is going to be over time, so I'd rather not have put like a 2 to 3 hour study together to go over all of the commandments. But as usual, we start with the foundations. We start with just setting some groundwork to understand what we are talking about and what we are, the reason for this series and the reason why we need to understand where we should be at with any type of series or any type of learning, right? So the mindset, heart set, and the spirit set is definitely going to be first as usual. But again, this is a series, and this will be the first part of the series, okay? So, without further ado, and let me actually give you guys the reason why also. Amplified, okay? So the reason why it's amplified means to increase in strength or amount of something, such as sound or information. Okay, so it also can mean to make something larger or greater or stronger. Okay, so typically you'll hear, especially in the Torah community, follow the commandments, right? And obviously when you're reading it, follow the commandments. And the main thing is within, I would say what people will say is the first 5 books of the Torah. I say Pentateuch because it's easier to just understand those are 5 books, first 5. But when it comes down to how the commandments were given off the back, it's hard to see how Israel would receive those commandments off the back without an amplified understanding put in their heart, right, into their mind, into their spirit. And we see that because of the fact that they still fell into certain things that they fell into, right? So amplified is just really bringing these commandments to life, bringing the deeper implications of things that we understand in this walk to life. And that's the reason why we're going to look at not only the 10, but we're going to look at just the whole, okay? So that's the reason why it's called amplified. All right. So next slide here. Where is my first slide at? All right, so as always, mindset, heart set, and spirit set. All right. So understanding and counsel are a part of the spirit. Okay, so with understanding that we are not androids, we are not robots, right? That's essentially what they are already creating and have created, even without the genetically modified portion. But essentially, they've created their own. Men have always created their own set of laws and rules and things of that nature for men to follow, right? And so understanding the difference between why we are actually set apart and why the things of this world is not set apart is super important. It's super important to actually understand and carry, even though I do follow the Most High, right? It's a lot different when you understand it in its fullness, right? As much as you can, and also continue to receive counsel in the Word. So that's what we're looking to understand with the foundations today. And then understanding that there is counsel within the scriptures, right? And then also understanding that these commandments have precedence in our behaviors, right? So in acting godly ways. So you may not get that off the back when you read the commandments and think, okay, these are not only salvation issues, but they're also attributing to how I act, how I feel, how I think, right? And we're going to get into the understanding of what commandments mean and all of that stuff too. But just understanding that we are looking to improve our behaviors, right? And not just improving it in a worldly sense, but a godly sense. We're also trying to understand how to go about this in spirit and in truth. All right, so not in our own spirit and our own truth, is in the Most High's spirit and in truth. And then also your tabernacle. So if you don't know yet, your body is your tabernacle. This is your what they also call a temple. But in order for your tabernacle to be pure unto the Most High, obviously they have to make their abode in your tabernacle. And in order for the Most High to be in the Spirit and the Son to be inside of your tabernacle, you do know that we've said it a lot in other studies, but wisdom, which is within the Spirit, cannot dwell in evil, right? So if the tabernacle is evil, of course, the Most High, the Son, and the Ruach will not dwell in evil as well. So we are looking to not just follow these things, not just follow what we see, but truly purify tabernacle, truly purify and go about all actions, all thoughts, everything that we can in our tabernacle as pure as possible, because we know the Most High is within us. We know that the Spirit is within us, especially if we say so, especially if we're speaking His word. We want to be as pure as possible, right? And the more purity that we can attain to, especially in this dark world that just continues to be dark, the more light will shine from our tabernacle. And that way the Most High easily is identifying whose are his, right? We read in the Ascension of Isaiah study that as Isaiah was when he got to the sixth heaven, he looked down and realized that all the other heavens that he was already going through that was very bright and glorious wasn't even compared to the sixth heaven. And obviously the seventh was the top. So nothing was compared to that, but he realized how dark the world was. Just from, obviously where he ascended, he realized how dark it was. And ultimately, like, he didn't even want to go back, right? So just understanding that we are truly the light of the Most High, if the Most High dwells in us and is the light shining through us. That's why Matthew, I believe, is 5:16. Let your light shine. Oh, excuse me. I got a little bit of allergies here, but I'm going to read it verbatim. Matthew 5:16. Let your light. Not that version. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. All right. So ultimately, we want to make sure our tabernacle is pure and that the light is shining through. All right. And judgment court case. So we've talked about this in the Matsima study. So we all have a judgment, right? We all have a final judgment that we're all going to go through. And ultimately, we are trying to build our character letter. Okay, the character letter should literally resemble the Most High. It should resemble his Son. It should resemble all of his instructions within us, and ultimately reflect on what you need in order to pass this court case. We talked about how Matsima and his demons have already been gathering evidence, been gathering all types of accusations against us. So when our case is there, he's going to be there with his demons, and he's going to have mountains of scrolls on all the things that we've done wrong. And the Most High has set this judgment case up for us to actually win. The Father is the judge ultimately. His Son is also judged when he returns as well, but in the essence of the court case, he's our lawyer. He's like the intermediary between the judge and us. And so essentially he's given us the instructions on how to win this court case, right? How to win it, but also live in order that we escape this criminal judgment that is it is righteous. It's not even a technicality. It is the justified judgment that we all should technically be in hell because of us being born in sin. And so the court case is set up for us to literally win. And we just got to follow his instructions. But it's not just in a robotic way and just saying, I'm going to follow his commandments. Absolutely not. This is a heart set, mindset, spirit set. And he wants our tabernacle pure unto him. Okay, so that's what we're going into, doing this type of study. And like I said, this is a series, and this is not the only portion of the series. This is just setting the foundations and helping all of us just kind of get our mind and our heart and our spirit set on what we're actually going to continue to study, not just with me, but on your own time. Okay, and let's continue. And this won't be long today at all, so I've said that before, but I promise y'all it's not. Promise. Deuteronomy 6. I don't know if you ever watched SpongeBob. Maybe like 3 hours later. It won't be like that today, I promise. Alright. So Deuteronomy 6. Okay. If you got your word open or you got your laptop, tablet, whatever, please make sure you're reading with me. Alright. So Deuteronomy 6. It says, now this is the commandment, the statutes, and the rules that the Most High commanded me to teach you, that you may do them in the land which you are going over to possess it, that you may fear the Most High, you and your son's son, by keeping all his statutes and his commandments, which I command you all the days of your life, and that your days may be long. So, of course, you guys know, I'm always trying to challenge you to obviously make sure you continue to read on your own, study on your own, obviously, and just read deeper into certain things, right? So, we've all read this chapter before, but I think after today, you'll read it even a little bit better, because we always got to try to figure out what we can do better, right? So, you understand that, obviously, Moses is speaking to the people, and the thing is, he's telling them these rules and these statutes that Moses is going to teach them, that the Most High has given to him, so they can actually do it in the land which they were going to go over, right? And it's very, very symbolic, spiritually symbolic, physically symbolic, everything, okay? And just understand that it was supposed to be learned before they got into the land, okay? Verse 3. So hear therefore, O Israel, and be careful to do them, that it may go well with you. That it may go well with you. Be careful, that you may multiply greatly, as the Most High of your fathers has promised you, in a land flowing with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, the Most High, with all your heart and with all your... You shall love the Most High with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. And when the Most High brings you into the land that he swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, and to give you, with great and good cities that you did not build, and houses full of good things that you did not fill, and cisterns that you did not dig, and vineyards and olive trees that you did not plant. When you eat and are full, then take care lest you forget the Most High, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. It is the Most High, your Elohim, you shall fear. Him you shall serve, by his name you shall swear. You shall not go after other gods, the gods of people who are around you. The Most High Elohim in your midst is a jealous Elohim. Lest the anger of the Most High be kindled against you, he destroy you from off the face of the earth. Okay, so notice, it's not just sitting there saying, please follow these commandments. Do this, do that, do this. There is a heart, a mindset, a spiritual set behind all of these words, right? So off the back, not a lot of people will read it in that regard to see how, not only just how serious it is, but the things that are required within the requirements, right? So that's what we're going to kind of look at, the different things that kind of go into everything that he's basically given us from the very beginning, especially with Israel, but we're going to see even more, even from earlier times, how this coincides with Israel. So I'm going to read from the 119ministries.com site. They're pretty good. I really like their material. But we're going to actually talk about a little bit of the statutes, the commandments, the judgments, and the ordinances. We're going to talk about actually what are they, because I don't think a lot of people know what it is, and that's totally fine. But of course, that's why we do these studies, so we can try to figure out more of the differences in between each one. So, like I just read, Deuteronomy 6, all right? So, 1 through 2, it says, Now this is the commandment, the statutes and the judgments, which the Most High your Elohim has commanded to teach you, that you might do them in the land where you are going over to possess it. Okay? So that you and your son and your grandsons might fear the Most High, to keep his statutes and his commandments, which I command you all the days of your life, that your days may be prolonged. Okay? So, we're going to go through first, what is a commandment? Okay? So, commandment. The Hebrew word is mitzvah. All right, that's the Strong's H4687. And it's also from H6680. All right. So 119 Ministries, it says that using the KJV, we found that the commandment to be mitzvah in Hebrew. According to Strong's, mitzvah means a commandment of men or the Most High, or a commandment out of a code of wisdom. This definition wasn't much help, so we took it back to the root tsavah, which is 86680, and that's spelled Tsavah. Tsavah means to lay a charge upon. Actually, I'm sorry. I think I actually have the screenshots for this. Give me 1 second. I know I took screenshots. Oh, that's messed up. I try to format this stuff, and it doesn't. This one didn't work, apparently. Give me 1 second, y'all. Give me 1 second. All right. Let's see if this works. There it is. Okay. So I'm reading from the 119ministries.com. So the Hebrew word mitzvah. All right. So I'm already reading where it says tsavah. It says tsavah means to. The definition wasn't much help, so we took it back to the root word tsavah. Tsavah means to lay a charge upon, to command, to charge, to give orders, or to appoint. This brings more clarity to what a commandment would be. It's an order to do something or a charge given to us to watch over and keep. Okay, so a charge or to give orders or to appoint. Okay, what a commandment is supposed to basically mean. It turns out this definition makes a lot of sense because Genesis 26:5. Let me see if I have the next slide for this one. There it is. You might not be able to see it too well right there, but it turns out this definition makes a lot of sense because Genesis 26:5 and Deuteronomy 11:1, we are told about the Most High's charges. Digging deeper to test our new understanding of what a commandment is, we then study the term charge found in reference verses. The Hebrew word for charge is mishmereth. That's H4931. Means to guard, a charge, an obligation, service, to watch, keeping, or preserving. It is derived from mishmar, a place of confinement, a guard post, the act of guarding or observances. So we have a lot of information here that constantly is saying to watch over, to guard, to keep, to watch these orders, a charge that's giving to you, an obligation, a service. It's also meaning to a place of confinement, an act of guarding or observances. Stems from the base root of shamar, to keep, guard, observe, to observe, celebrate, or to keep, to abstain. Okay? So, as always, find the patterns. Find the patterns, all right? It says in order, let me get the next slide. All right. In order to gain more full understanding of what is meant by a charge, it's important to understand where the word comes from at its root, because both scriptures referenced above contain the phrase shamar mishmereth, or to keep a charge. This makes sense in keeping our definition of a commandment being a charge or an obligation, something to be watched over, preserved, or observed. The relationship between the words and the phrase shamar mishmereth makes it clear that a charge is something we should be paying attention to. When taken back to the root, shamar, we found the word means to keep, guard, observe, give heed to keep within bounds, to observe, to celebrate, or to keep. The phrase shamar mishmereth is telling us to keep a charge. We are to keep, preserve, and observe instructions of our Creator. We are to keep the charges or commandments He lays upon us. We believe the charges and commandments refers to His covenants, orders, or guidelines, His laws or instruction. Okay? So, essentially, from the summary of what a commandment is, it is essentially the charge. Okay? It's what is given to you in order to keep, which means that there is an instruction that's attached to the charge. Okay? So, essentially, what we're saying, if he's saying to obey his charges, obey his commandments, obey his charges, he's saying to obey, keep watch, observe his instruction that is given to us in order to live the right way. Okay? All right, so now let's look at the word judgments. And hopefully I took all these screenshots. It was way easier to just put the screenshot on there. Okay, so judgment. We have the word mishpat. That's the Hebrew word mishpat for judgment. It's Strong's H4941. And it's also from H8199. Mishpat is the Hebrew word meaning the process of deciding a decision in law, justice, ordinance, the legal right or privilege due. So again, it's the Hebrew word meaning the process of deciding a decision in law, justice, ordinance, the legal right or privilege due. In modern terms, our understanding would be that the judgments refer to tell us how to handle a situation according to the Most High. For example, when adultery was committed, we were given a process to follow in order to handle things the Most High's way. Always the Most High's way. When an animal was injured while under the care of another, we were given instructions on what type of retribution was owed. When we take mishpat back to its root, shapat, we are able to confirm this understanding. Shapat means to judge, to govern, vindicate, punish, to rule, or decide controversy. The Most High provided us the method by which just and right rulings could be made to best govern his people. The same understanding is applied when the Most High brought judgments upon his people and other nations. He has set up a process to follow and appropriate consequences for each situation, just as we do today. Let's see here. By following his judgments, the innocent are vindicated and the guilty are responsible for the appropriate restitution afforded to the wrong party. There is a clear difference between a commandment, which is an order or charge to be followed and observed, and a judgment, which is the way to handle situations between his people. This brings us to statutes and ordinances. So essentially, when you think about the judgment and commandments, they are still attached to the instruction. So there's never a time where the instruction isn't actually given in order for the commandment, the charge, to be placed to the person to keep it, or also the judgment, which is the way to handle situation between his people. Right? So for example, if this is kind of going ahead, but if the Most High says to love your neighbor as yourself, right? So that is the charge, commandment given to us, right? And if there's a situation where it's going to be a judgment within love your neighbor as yourself, because if, let's just say, two people don't get along, there's going to be judgments for how you go about a situation, whether or not someone did this to that person or this to that person, or whatever the case is. There's a judgment that's going to be attached to the instruction, right? Essentially just understanding, like, as parents, right? You give your children instructions on what to do and what not to do. And if they do the wrong thing, there's going to be a consequence for it, right? But then again, how do you handle the situation in order for the person or the children to not continue to break those rules or to handle it accordingly for the next time? Okay, so very, very practical, very logical, easy for us to remember and understand. All right, so now we're going to get into Statute T. So I think I have this screenshot here. Yep. All right, so Statute T. The Hebrew word is chalk. The word often translated as Statute T is chalk in Hebrew. Chalk is a statute, a condition or a civil enactment from the Most High. An ordinance, which is an enactment or decree, a limit or something prescribed, a task, portion, limit, boundary. Another word that could be used to define shock is a requirement. Note that the word ordinance is used in definition of shock. So let us go ahead and define ordinance before we continue. Okay? Very interesting. Okay, so ordinance is also shock or shaka. As you may be able to tell, the same root word shock or a derivative of shock, chuka, is used whenever we see the English word ordinance in the word. Examples of this are in Exodus 18:20 and Leviticus 18:3-4. Okay, so let's read. What does it say? Exodus 18:20. So I'm just going to read it just for the study, so we have it up here. Exodus 18:20. And it says, "And you shall warn them about the statutes and the laws, and make them know the way in which they must walk and what they must do." Interesting. And then it says Leviticus 18:3-4. It says, "And you shall not do as they do in the land of Egypt where you live, and you shall not do as they do in the land of Canaan, to which I am bringing you. You shall not walk in their statutes. You shall follow my rules and keep my statutes and walk in them. I am the Most High, your Elohim." Okay, that's very interesting. Okay, so going back to what it says about shaka. It says, the Strong's defines shaka as a statute, ordinance, limit, enactment, or something prescribed. In this, we see the words statute and ordinance really are interchangeable. Now we know. Now, some may say that, what about Exodus 15:25? In some translations, the phrase used is, "He made for them a statute and an ordinance." We go back to the Hebrew, you find the second word, ordinance. There's actually better translated as judgments, since the word used is mishpat. Interesting. When you go back to the Hebrew, you find the second word, ordinance. Continuing on. A statute is a civil decree or an enactment from our Creator, something prescribed for us to do or a boundary set. As an example of what this means, we are instructed not to kindle a fire on Shabbat. This is a boundary or limit set on what we cannot do. Other examples would include what we cannot do while unclean, or what a woman can or cannot do during her menstrual cycle. These are specific decrees. They sound like commands or orders that's been given, right? We would agree they are. It is our understanding that our statutes are a type of command, but not all commandments or commands are statutes. For example, the 10 Commandments are like the chapters in a book, a high level of what we cannot do pertaining to different areas. Within each chapter, which within each command, we find further instruction on what obeying the commandments looks like. We hope this is making some sense. So, it does make sense, right? Because of the fact that if there are things that within an instruction, so if the instruction is first, it's saying, like, we're going to get into that about how the instructions were given in the beginning, but we're going to go back to just parent to a child. So if a parent tells their children, these cookies are going into a cookie jar, right? And I'm going to set them on top of the fridge or the counter. Do not eat these cookies. And if you do eat these cookies, you'll have a consequence. So within the instruction to not do something, you do have the different portions of, let's just say, do not open the top. Do not even touch the cookie jar. Don't even look at the cookies. So you're not tempted to open up the cookie jar and do what I said you should not do. You know, something in that manner, statutes can be applied to. What else does it say here? Let's see here. And there is a judgment attached to it, right? So going again back to judgment, it says that there's a way that the situation will be handled. based off of however the instruction was carried out, whether it was broken or whether it was, you know, obviously, there's obedience that was put towards the instruction. So let's continue. It says, as a review, a commandment is an order or charge given to us to keep or observe. So like the commandments, his feast days, Shabbat, judgments tell us how to handle situations that arise between his people. And statutes are the decrees or requirements describing how to live in obedience to him. Okay, so the requirements describing how to live in obedience to him. And then now we have law. We got law now. Okay, so let me bring that screenshot up. That's the only one I don't have, but it's okay. I'll just read it. It's probably a screenshot on here, but it's probably going to be super magnified. Let's see. Yep. That's super magnified, but it's all right. So law. The Hebrew word is Torah, as you guys should know already, right? This is the strongest H8451 and from H3384. In the Hebrew, Torah means a special law or codes of law, directions/instruction, both human and divine. And it says a custom or a manner, and even the Deuteronomic or Mosaic law. The word for law can and contextually should be understood as being inclusive of commandments, judgments, and statutes given to us by the Creator through Moses. However, the context will also dictate when the word for law is referring to commands or direction from men and not the Most High. Very key. Both uses of the word are correct in different areas of the Bible. For more understanding, we should recommend you watch our Pauline Paradox series. So, 119 Ministries has a Pauline Paradox series that I'm going to watch eventually as well. But just like they're saying here, obviously there's a big difference between what the Most High is giving as direction and what man is giving, okay? And it also represents the body of prophetic teaching, body of legal directives, body of priestly direction and instruction. So we're going to kind of go over that a little bit later too. Let's see here. And so we'll look into Torah as well, because it's a lot more than just law, obviously. Okay, so that was just a little bit of understanding the differences between the commands, the judgments, the statutes, and the ordinances. Okay. Again, that was from 119 Ministries that I took the screenshot from. Make sure you guys also do more research on that, get more understanding. But so far, obviously that was a really good foundation for us to go off of. And the next thing is, do we see any commands, any commandments, any statutes, any ordinances, anything that was given in the very beginning? So off the bat, when you first start learning about all this, you may not actually see it off the bat, because it's really overlooked, especially if you came from Christianity, if you came from Catholicism, etc. You know that obviously the whole commandments ordeal is very overlooked. Following his instructions is very overlooked. It's a hyper grace movement, hyper mercy movement. And it's just very overlooked. And it's a lot of things that's just not connecting when it comes down to the doctrine that they've put in place. So in the beginning, so you look at Genesis 1 through 2, the first thing you see as far as commandment is concerned, it says, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it. Okay, so an instruction to do so. All right. Obviously, in order for man and woman to be fruitful, he also gave this same command for the animals. But in order for that to happen, obviously there would be a description on how that would be the case, right? So it's not written, in code on here, because obviously that would have to do with the man and the woman coming together, right? Obviously the beasts would be coming together in their own ways of however each one, however insect, whatever it may be, they all have a process on how to be fruitful, right? And how multiplying and filling the earth would even mean. Okay. So the other one, it says, for man, they have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over every living thing that moves on the earth. So this was a direct decree and command, essentially embedded into man. Okay, so it wasn't something that obviously they were given to do. This was actually embedded into them in order for them to understand that they have the power and the authority over the fish, over the birds, over the beasts. Okay. Then the next one, it says, behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed is on the face of the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. So this is very, very interesting. For those who are very health oriented, as we all should be, this is very key too, because of the fact that you see there's a specific way that man is supposed to eat. Man is supposed to have their nutrition. And then you see when they're expelled out of the garden, it's all different, right? But essentially the foundations are already set from the very beginning, and this is a command. This is a part of the commands that he's already been given for man to actually live. Like this is this is the essentials, right? So there you see literally for their livelihood, this is the food that the Most High has given man. And it's kind of interesting. You guys can look into this too. When he told the beasts of the earth, as far as their food, I don't see that it said actually like eat fruit. I think it just said eat like herbs, like more so like vegetables. But you guys can look into that yourself, confirm with me. But I think that's very interesting too. And let's continue. So what else? So the Most High took man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and keep it. So again, this is a command that's given to man in the beginning. You're going to begin this garden and you're going to keep it. Okay? So when we're reading Genesis 1 through 2, and anything in the regular canon, a lot of times we're not taught to read it. You can't really read it in like a certain time lapse, because you're not going to really see it off the back of what you're reading and being like, okay, well, this happened the next day, unless it actually says it. But essentially with Genesis 1 and 2, it seems like it's happening all at once, or all next time, or, in sequences. So that's why when we'll read Genesis or Jubilees 2, we'll see how many days it actually took before they were actually put in the garden. Okay. But just on a basic level, the Most High gave man the duty, gave man their first job, which is to guard the garden, work it and keep it. Okay. The Most High commanded the man, saying, you may surely eat of every tree of the garden, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in that day you shall eat of it and you shall surely die. So this goes back to the statutes. It goes back to the judgments. It goes back to the commandments. Like everything is always going to go back to what I call like the big four. Okay, so you got the commandments, you got the judgments, you got the statutes, you got the ordinances. Okay, so essentially he's telling us, you may surely eat. You can do this, but you cannot do that. Very simple. You could do this good thing, but you cannot do this evil thing. Okay, and if you do eat of this evil thing, you'll surely die. And essentially, anytime you have something good that's told for you to do, you're still going to have the same consequence in the sense of a positive consequence. Okay, so there's always going to be consequences on both sides. That's one thing we didn't really learn a lot growing up. As far as consequences, it starts neutral. It's always going to be put in a negative connotation, but it starts neutral, right? But there's other words for benefits, like the word benefits if you do something right. But that's like some psychology stuff too. where they talk about positive reinforcement and all of that stuff too. Yes, ma'am. No, sister, I know how that works. Trust me. I, I got you. Shalom. And then also Genesis 1-2, he talks about naming the animals. Okay. So now we're going to move on to Jubilees 2-3. Jubilees 2-3. So you have Genesis 1-2. You have like a really solid foundational understanding of looking at the commandments that were given from the beginning. And then you have Jubilees 2-3. So it's giving you a lot more detail of what happens in the creation days. And so in Jubilees 2, it goes super in on keeping the Shabbat. Okay, so that's a very good read. It talks about keeping the Shabbat, keeping how he gave it to Israel to keep it, et cetera, super detailed. All right. And then my question would be, did Adam and Eve keep Shabbat? Okay, so we're gonna keep that thought, that question there. We're gonna kind of answer it later. And it says name the animals and etc. So they were obviously still naming the animals and etc. So we still have that connection. And now it says in Jubilees 3 that Adam was given a 40-day workers training and Eve 80 days. So essentially the same thing. If you go to any job, typically you're going to have a training period, right? So same thing with the Most High. He didn't just create them and then all of a sudden just throw them in a garden and say, keep it. With no instructions. Always. Instruction is always going to be attached to commandments, the charge that's given to you to keep the actual instruction, the judgments, the ordinances, and the statutes. Always an instruction given. Whether or not it's going to be detailed or flat out just simple, but all his instructions are attached. Together, you could find scripture references for all of those. All right, so 40 days, and then Eve 80 days. All right, and then on top of that, Jubilees tells us that they had 7 years of tillage. So they were doing what they were told to do, all the instructions that were given to them, for 7 whole years. All right. On that day that they completed the 7th year, that's when when the enemy came in and basically messed them up. It's very, very, very key because how I usually say it is like they didn't really make it to the 7th day. They made it, but they got kicked out on the 7th day, and that's very symbolic. Okay. So moving on to Jasher. Chapter 1, it says, the Most High blessed them and called their names Adam and Eve in the day that he created them. And the Most High said, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. So we see that again. And the Most High took Adam and Eve, placed them in the garden to dress it and to keep it. So you get more of a visual on thinking, how would you, if you were put in a garden, how would you be dressing and keeping the garden, right? Like a gardener, obviously. And he commanded them and said, unto every tree of the garden you may eat, but from the tree of knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat. From that day you shall thereof you shall surely die. So, and again it says, when the Most High blessed and commanded them, he went from them, and Adam and his wife dwelt in the garden according to the command which the Most High had commanded them. So, very practical stuff we can literally see in the very beginning. Okay, this is a very important connection to also attach. Sirach chapter 15, read it plenty of times before, but let me make sure I read it again. Sirach chapter 15. Always title this one, he does not give us a license to sin. If you ever want to remember that, what this chapter is. So I want to read 11 through 20. So Sirach chapter 15, 11 through 20. It says, do not say, because of the Most High, I left the right way, for he will not do what he hates. Do not say, it is he who led me astray, for he had no need of a sinful man. The Most High hates all abominations, and they are not loved by those who fear him. It was he who created man in the beginning, and he left him in the power of his own inclination. If you will, you can keep the commandments, and to act faithfully is a matter of your own choice. So we literally see in the beginning, they're giving the instruction that is attached to the charge that they are giving, to the commandment, and the judgment, and the ordinance, and the statute. Okay? So he gives them this, just as you would for a child, and expect them to obey it, right? And on top of that, he gave Adam 40 days before he even put him in the garden, and he gave Eve 80 days. So it's a very, very important to understand that he gave man understanding before placing them right into the garden, okay? Again, chapter 15 of Sirach, it says, if you will, verse 15, if you will, you can keep the commandments, and you can keep his charges that are attached to the instructions that he's already given, and to act faithfully, to stand on those, and is a matter of your own choice. He has placed before you fire and water. Stretch out your hand, whichever you wish. Before a man are life and death, and whichever he chooses will be given to him. For great is the wisdom of the Most High. He is mighty in power and sees everything. His eyes are on those who fear him, and he knows every deed of man. He has not commanded anyone to be ungodly. Anyone. He has not commanded anyone. There is no such rule that he gave man in the beginning that would allow him to be ungodly. It was always to be set apart. And he has not given anyone permission to sin. So you saw in the beginning, there was no out. There's no out for his instruction that has charges connected to it. If he just gives an instruction without saying obey this, or without saying observe this, watch it, keep it, etc., then essentially he's just giving you a choice whether or not it's you're allowed to break it, right? It's like literally telling, again, the parent to child thing, hey, don't touch that cookie in the cookie jar. But at the same time, you can have it, and it's kind of for you, but at the same time, I don't really want you to do that, right? So it's like a personal charge or personal commandment or instruction that you're giving to the child. But the child, when they're receiving it, they're like, okay, well, this is kind of optional, because even if I do get the cookie, technically it's for me, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So they're looking for like an out. If you're not giving the instruction with charges and judgments and ordinances and statutes with the instruction, the child is going to look for an out. And essentially, what did Adam and Eve do? They were cool for 7 years, and then all of a sudden, who presented that out for them? The enemy, right? The enemy presented that out to Eve. And in the life of Adam and Eve, in the Greek version translation, it does say that Matsima or Satan made Eve promise an oath to him that she would go give the fruit of the tree of knowledge of evil to knowledge of good and evil to Adam. So she had to literally make an oath with Satan that she's going to go basically beguile her own husband and make him sin as well. So again, it's justified punishment. Why, if you break his commandments, you break his charge, you already broke his instructions that are attached to the charge, attached to the judgment, attached to the ordinance, attached to the statutes. It's justified. What the justified consequence is, which is death, and that's why he told them not to eat of it. Okay? So moving on. Got some allergies in here, man. Okay, so the big four. Remember, the big four are the commandments, the statutes, the ordinances, and the judgments. Okay? So with angels and demons, do they have a part in the big four? Absolutely. Okay? So in Jubilees 2, what you're going to find, and like I said, this is all setting up the foundation. So you guys will have to obviously go read it again, as you always should do. But Jubilees 2, it talks about the angels actually keep the Shabbat. And I'll actually pull that up real quick. And I think they kept it up until a certain time based off of how it's reading. And that is Jubilees 2. And I think they still keep it. So this is chapter 2, Jubilees, and verse 17. It says, He gave us a great sign, the Sabbath day, that we should work 6 days but keep Sabbath on the seventh day from all work. And the angels of the presence and the angels of sanctification. These two great classes. And these are two great classes that were actually made on the first day according to Jubilees chapter 2? Or no, 3. It says, He hath bidden us to keep the Shabbat with Him in heaven and on earth. So they keep the Shabbat with Him in heaven and on earth. And then it starts talking about that the Most High was separating a people unto Himself. Okay? But notice, the angels have commandments as well. They have ordinances. They have things that they observe, charges that they observe as well. So it's very key to understand why they would even be celebrating and keeping the Shabbat in heaven. Okay? Something for you to look into. But I did do a little bit of that study of the 7th and 8th day, part 1, already. So if you need to want to watch that, it's very heavy, heavily packed, but it's not done. So it's a lot more that's going to go into it a little bit later on. But it's still pretty good. So Jubilees 6, 15 through 18. All right. So let's see. This one is about angels celebrating Shavuot. And this is verse 15. And he gave to Noah and his sons a sign that there should not again be a flood on the earth. And he set his bow in the cloud for a sign of the eternal covenant, that there should not again be a flood on the earth to destroy it all the days of the earth. For this reason it is ordained and written on the heavenly tablets, that they should celebrate the Feast of Weeks in this month once a year, to renew the covenant every year. So you notice, they had to celebrate it. They had to observe it. They had to watch and do these things in order to renew the covenant every year. This is super key. Verse 18. And this whole festival was celebrated in heaven from the day of creation till the days of Noah. Very key that it's worded this way. This whole festival was celebrated in heaven from day of creation, the first day. Talking about Shavuot, the Feast of Weeks, and the Feast of First Fruits. This twofold feast, from day one, it was celebrated. It's very interesting. So day one, again, in Jubilees chapter 3, it'll tell you that the angels, I think it was Jubilees chapter 3, let me make sure so I say this right. So Jubilees chapter 2, I'm sorry. It'll tell you as far as what was created in the first day, which are all the angels, okay? So you literally have all the angels keeping the Shabbat, right? Angels of sanctification and of the presence. And then on top of that, you have them keeping Shavuot, the Feast of the Weeks, and the first fruits in heaven. But this one is different because it's going to tell you in verse 16, 17, 18. It says, until the days of Noah is when they were actually celebrating it in heaven. So it says 26 Jubilees and 5 weeks of year, and Noah and his sons observed it for 7 Jubilees and 1 week of years till the day of Noah's death. And from the day of Noah's death, his sons did away with it until the days of Abraham, and they ate blood. And Abraham observed it, and Isaac and Jacob and his children observed it up to thy days. And in thy days the children of Israel forgot it until you celebrate it anew on this mountain. And do thou command the children of Israel to observe this festival in all their generations for a commandment unto them. For it is the Feast of Weeks and the Feast of First Fruits. You see, this feast is twofold and of a double nature, according to what is written and engraven concerning it, celebrated. So, you notice, this wasn't kept perfectly. It's never been kept perfectly. It's been allowed to be kept, but none of it has been ever kept perfectly, especially this specific feast and etc. and the rest of them. But Shabbat is still celebrated and kept in heaven till this day. It's very important, very, very important, and obviously look into that. Okay, so again, angels have exactly things that we would have as well to guard as a commandment, all right? And they keep it, except for the fallen ones, they did not keep it, right? And then you see the angels actually aid in judgment, okay? So Genesis 19 through 13, and this is going to be the one with Sodom and Gomorrah, okay? This is when the Most High was getting ready to destroy the place. And obviously the angels have a lot to do with his judgments. They do separate things in separate ways and various portions of how all this is connected. But ultimately, there are things that have to be done between, obviously, like when it comes down to a judgment, when it comes down to the ordinance, between the judgment of what should be done between man. So going back to 119 Ministries. So revisiting judgment. So the commandment that's an order or a charge to be followed and observed, and then a judgment is a way to handle situations between his people. So essentially within the angels and the demons the angels more so, that have to handle situations between his people. For example, there is one portion where there is an angel that came up with David when he wasn't supposed to, number the Israelites. And then the destroying angel was starting to destroy all the people because David was actually given a choice of what his punishment should be. And then the Most High ended up stopping the angel from destroying them after a certain portion. But the consequence was, the negative consequence was still there because of the fact that it's righteous judgment by the Most High in order when somebody did something wrong that they should have done. And so the judgment, the situation between the people and the Most High, the angel is there to carry out what was needed in order to bring everything, like the parties together, basically. Okay, so that word judgment is very interesting. It's a very interesting. You can obviously connect it to how court is set up, obviously, but it's just a little bit more within it. But it's like a deciding, it's a governing, it's a judgment, it's an action that needs to handle a situation, a decision. Okay, something that's justified. All right. So then as far as the demons are concerned, of course, they have to follow what they have to follow. Matsima did ask the Most High, I believe it's Jubilees 11 or so, or 12, if he could command the demons. And he only could command 1/10 of them. So he was given that right to command 1/10 of them, but essentially he's still having to carry out the charges, the instructions that are given to him in order for him to do certain things. He's not just going crazy on his own and just out of control. The Most High has him on lock as well. All right, let's continue. Where is my next slide at? Okay. All right, so laws and the priesthood. So there's going to be another study into the priesthood a little bit later. But this is very important because when you look at the priesthood The priesthood is everything. The priesthood has been online with from the very beginning, and I'm actually going to talk about that in the other study, because there's something that we've actually overlooked with the priesthood. There's a lot of things we overlook with priesthood, but it's very important. Very, 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 very important. Because if we didn't have a priesthood, none of this really would have been possible. So the atonement portion. So if we understand atonement, okay, so I'm going to go ahead and look up atonement Hebrew definition, all right? The word is kafar. It means to cover over. To cover over. It's an abstract word, and in order to understand the true Hebrew meaning of a word, we must look to the concrete meaning. If an offense has been made, the one that has been offended can act as though the offense is covered over and unseen. Very, very key. What do you think the priesthood was for? We express this idea through the word of forgiveness. Atonement is an outward action that covers over the error. Okay? Go look into the priesthood. Okay? The priesthood, they were fully set apart. The Levites were taken as a people to themselves within his own people that he set to himself. But this is very interesting too. He actually made a general statement over the whole tribe of Israel before he actually set the Levites apart. Give me 1 second. And it's in Deuteronomy. No way. Okay. So Deuteronomy 7. I think it's Deuteronomy 7. I thought I had this up already, but I should have made a note. But it should be in Deuteronomy 7, and basically this one is talked about as a chosen people. Okay? In verse 6, it says, "You are a holy people to the Most High. The Most High has chosen you to be a people for himself, a special treasure above all peoples on the face of the earth. The Most High did not set his love on you, nor choose you because you were more in number than any other people, for you were the least of all the peoples. But because the Most High loves you, and because he would keep the oath which he swore to your fathers, the Most High has brought you out with a mighty hand and redeemed you from the house of bondage, from the hand of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt." All right. So there was, I'm probably not going to be able to find it in this study. So I apologize, but there is a scripture that does say that that Israel will be priests. And this is not just the Levites, but obviously we know that the Levites were taken specifically to and embedded into the priesthood. Okay. I'm going to read a little bit about the priesthood for a little bit. Okay, so it says, "In establishing the priesthood in ancient Israel, the Most High brought to life an awesome vision." And it says the purpose of this priesthood is to build a family relationship between the Most High and his people. On the one hand, the Most High's priests point people to him, and on the other, they represent the people to him, appearing in his presence on their behalf. Okay, so they are literally a covering. Okay. And you have to realize, like, literally, you have the Father here, okay? You have the priests, and then you have the people, okay? So if you think about, let's just say how we feel in prayer. We feel that our prayer, and we know that our prayers are going straight up to him. But imagine there was a block. Imagine that there was no way to remove this block, and every time you sent a prayer up, it's getting hit on the ceiling. That's essentially how the priests were, but the way that they would receive the prayer, it was almost like they would kind of convert it and make sure it was acceptable to the Most High, and then they would throw it back up there, or they would continue to allow it to go up there, or they would deny it. So just like a visual to think about, but that's how it was. So it's interesting when the Mashiach dies, that it says the temple curtain was torn into two, how important that is. Okay. But there were so many other portions about how people were praying to the Most High, David, kings, etc. So there was still a lot of that already happening, Old Testament times, but it was a bigger deal because of the sacrifices and etc. But priesthood still in the middle. Okay. It says the laws the Most High gave concerning the priesthood are loaded with spiritual beauty and relevance for the Most High's ministers and for all New Testament Christians today. So this is for an article I'm reading. Responsible position. So it says Numbers 18 shows that being in the priesthood was both a blessing and a serious responsibility. The Most High was deeply concerned with how these men represented Him, just as He is with His priests today. Let's see here. Continue. So Numbers 18:5, it says that basically Aaron and his sons were responsible for everything from the altar of sacrifice, to within the Holy of Holies. Specific responsibilities including lighting the lamps, keeping the fire on those lamps always burning, offering sacrifices, receiving people's tithes, offering first fruits, governing the Levites and supervising their service, preparing to move the tabernacle, carrying the ark, and more. So imagine your whole salvation being put into the hands of man, essentially, right? Imagine like trying to go to sleep thinking like, yeah, the Levites got it. They did our sacrifices today. They atoned for us today. Like, imagine that. Imagine like you have to literally put your trust in man. Because no priest ever was perfect. Even though Enoch was a priest. He was essentially had that king-priest relationship that I've talked about before. But that's the study that's eventually coming to really look at that and examine it more. But he still was born into sin. He was still a man. He's still born into sin, as we all are, right? So there was no true perfect priest until the Son. That's why he is the high priest. He is the high priest, capital THE. He is the king, like he's the perfect king. So just understanding like the Levites, the priesthoods, they were really like right in the middle. But they were also given the commandments. They were also given the charge to make sure that they gave the people the understanding of what is clean and what is unclean. Okay? Let's see here. So it says that the priesthood was a privileged service, God-given and God-appointed. And the Most High's priests are teachers. They are guardians and stewards of the Most High's law. It says in ancient Israel, the Most High used the temple to conduct his religious service and teach his law. As judges, they were expected to know and teach the law, so that they had to be diligent law students. In Malachi 2:7, it says the priest's lips should keep knowledge. This is actually where I got the name of the page from that chapter 2, that talks about the Torah of truth should always be in their mouth, basically, into a priest's mouth. But they should be keeping knowledge. They should be guarding and protecting the spiritual knowledge, and they can use and teach it. So they not only were teaching others, but they were using it for themselves. Let's see here. And so, so they were always obviously a blessing. When you read in Ezra or Nehemiah, you see this beautiful moment where they're coming back. They're all back together from their captivity, in a sense, and understanding that they're trying to observe a specific feast day at that point, and they're reading the law. They're reading his instruction, and then everybody is like crying, like hearing his word. And the Levites are like, yeah, you guys just don't cry. It's okay. Like, because they weren't supposed to, at the reading of the word, they're supposed to receive it with thanksgiving and joy. But they were crying. Like, the people were weeping, like, because they realized, like, within their heart as well, knowing how bad they fell. and how much things have changed, and if they would have just kept the understanding of the word and et cetera, et cetera. But they were just like, it was like a mix of emotions. So that's in Ezra and Nehemiah. You can even read more of Second Ezra as well, and First and Second Ezra, very good reads, and Nehemiah. So you get more of an understanding of how the priests were literally setting the tone. They were setting the understanding of the word, but they also had to make sure that the people were purified. And the Levitical priesthood, it did fall. It did fail, but it still was established. Okay, still is established. Very key. So, like I said, that's going to be later in another study that we'll talk about the priesthood. But it's just something to consider, that the priesthood, they had separate laws that they had to also engage in. So they just couldn't just go into the tabernacle unclean. Like, you had to literally clean yourself. It was such a peculiar way. I always say, like, if I was a Levitical priest in that time, I probably would have failed first day, because it's like so many rules that you have to follow and make sure you cleanse yourself this way 7 times, and it was a lot. It was a whole lot. I highly don't think I would have been able to remember every single thing. And I probably would have got banned the first day trying to follow all those Levitical priesthood laws. All right, so royal priesthood as well. So it's something to very also consider in your own studies when it comes down to the Torah, comes down to the law, comes down to the commandments, the judgments, the ordinances, statutes. Think about the royal priesthood. Think about where we are right now. Think about why it talks about the laws in our heart. Why does it say that he made an incision of his word into our heart? Why did he take the Levites to himself out of all of the tribes? Why were they special in the regard of doing what they were supposed to do? And how does that coincide with what it says as a royal priesthood and who we are in the Most High? So, connect those type of dots to really see like how this whole walk has been formulated, and where we are today. All right, continuing here. I think we only have Is this the only slide actually? I think we have, this is the second to last slide. Well, let me make sure. Oh, no, it's not. Okay. So this is not the slide yet. Give me 1 second. Why guard his commands? There it is. Okay, so why guard his commands? All right, so in Proverbs 2:8, Proverbs 2:8. It says, for he guards the course of the just and protects the way of his faithful ones. So I actually had another something to read on that. Give me 1 second. Okay, so Proverbs 2:8. So it says, guarding the paths of justice and watching over the way of his saints. All right. So Proverbs 2:8, it says, verses 6 and 7 provide reasons to be confident when we seek wisdom and understanding from the Most High. Those who do will find he has plenty of both to offer and will act as a shield of protection for us. So isn't that interesting when you look at the Levitical priesthood and essentially what they were as far as being a shield, being a covering, and also looking into atonement, what that means as far as the shield of covering, the atonement actually means. Obviously look into detail. It's very interesting. It says, this is related to the concept of living virtuously, which in ancient philosophy meant pursuing several key traits. Verse 7 in particular grounds or our sense Verse 7 in particular grounds our sense of courage and trust. As with other biblical passages, this kind of reassurance is meant to be encouraging, literally that which gives others courage. So verse 8 concludes by giving additional examples of why we can be courageous in pursuing the wisdom of the Most High. The two words used in this verse, which are translated as guard, watch over, or preserve. So remember, we have these patterns, okay? So essentially we have the same pattern as commandments, the charge that's given for us to guard and watch over. It says, these guard and watch over from the two Hebrew root words natsar and shamar. They literally mean to keep a watchful guard over or to keep protectively. If the Most High calls us to be a light, he will be the keeper of the lighthouse. If the Most High calls us to be salt, he will ensure the salt does not lose its flavor. No one can stand against the Most High. If he is our keeper, we can live courageously. So you see there's another twofold. It's a him to us, us to him. It's always going here. Okay? It says this verse also uses the term justice, another key virtue featured in ancient philosophy. Wisdom, the proper application of knowledge, results in justice or righteousness when we act as the Most High's wills. This requires both faith and courage, which ultimately only confidence in the Most High can supply. All right, so I really like this little description here, but it goes into understanding about protecting and being a watchman. Okay, so Ezekiel 33. It's one of the best chapters on being a watchman. Okay. And this one is subtitled Renewal of Ezekiel's Call as a Watchman. So in this one, he's telling Ezekiel to warn the people. So he says, verse 2, Son of man, speak to your people and say to them, when I bring the sword against the land and the people of the land, choose one of their men and make him their watchman. And he sees the sword coming against the land and blows the trumpet to warn the people. If anyone hears the trumpet but does not heed the warning, and the sword comes and takes their life, their blood will be on their own head. Since they heard the sound of the trumpet but did not heed the warning, their blood will be on their own head. If they had heeded the warning, they would have saved themselves. But if the watchman sees the sword coming and does not blow the trumpet to warn the people, and the sword comes and takes someone's life, that person's life will be taken because of their sin. But I will hold the watchman accountable for their blood. Okay, so then he talks about Ezekiel being a watchman over Israel. Okay, so very, very key. So as a watchman, not only are you watching over the charges and protecting over the charges and the ordinances and the things that are given to you through the instructions that he's given to us, you're also doing it for other people in order to warn them, in order to tell them, in order to share his instructions with them. Essentially going back to the beginning, if Adam doesn't tell Eve, or if they both literally don't have the instructions together, then they would have failed on the first day, but they still pretty solid for 7 years, right? Again, Adam is doing his workers training for 40 days. Then he gets placed in the garden. So Eve is doing her workers training for 80 days. And then she's getting placed in the garden. So now you have Adam, 40 days workers training, and then he's in the garden for 40 days by himself. Eve is literally 80 days, and she's also without Adam for 80 days, right? So it's very, very interesting because he understands and knows who his people are, okay? So when we understand him, we understand how to guard, how to protect, how to literally be a watchman. What it means to not just sit there and say, obey his commands, but also understand what are the inner details of the commandments, of his charges, because there's attached to the instructions. Why are we trying to keep his commandments? Why are we supposed to be doing that? Why are we supposed to understand his statutes, keep his statutes, his judgments, etc.? Right? And how do we attach that to ourselves? So we are literally a watchman over our tabernacle. Let's see here. And then obviously the prophets, right? So Ezekiel was a prophet. So you see easily he is a watchman, just as all the other prophets were. All right. And then for you to get a visual of a watchman, okay? So watchmen were assigned to stand vigil in the tower. So they were strong. They were always watching. They would watch for threats of impending danger and would protect the city by informing the inhabitants of the arrival of those who seek to harm them. They also protected the crops by watching for those who would seek to steal their harvest. So again, you have another concept to understand that it also can be applied in different areas. So think about your spirit. Think about your tabernacle, right? So if you see sin, you see evil, therefore your spirit will tell you stay away from that, right? But the more a watchman isn't watching, the less the spirit will actually warn you, because remember in the other scripture it says that wisdom cannot dwell in evil. So if a watchman is not watching and is surrounded by evil and constantly engaging in evil, there's not going to be a warning. So not only is there not a warning from the Holy Spirit because the Holy Spirit is not within them, they're going to allow the evil spirit to continue to allow them to engage in all the activities that they shouldn't, and essentially make their own book of righteousness, as it says in Wisdom chapter 2, where it says that they essentially was just saying YOLO. You only live once. Let's do all these different things. Let's do all get drunk or whatever the case is. And it says that they follow their own law of righteousness. So they made what is actually bad good for them because of their own philosophy. And then they saw that righteous man, the man living for the Most High, and they got irritated. They got frustrated, and they tried to trap him at the end. But they realized that he is a man of the Most High. So that's Wisdom chapter 2. But essentially, if you are a watchman, right, you're not just doing it in your own flesh, in your own mindset, in your own body, in your own power. You're doing it through the Most High. And in order for you to truly watch and be vigilant the entire time, you need his spirit to hold you down. You need his spirit to truly be activated within you to not allow the enemy to gain entry into your towers, into your tabernacle. Okay? So, again, keeping his charge by understanding where the instruction is coming from has so much more implication, deeper understanding for us to truly walk in him in the ways if he's telling us to do what he's asking us to do. We have to have our heart and our whole body connected to all of this. It's truly just more than just saying keep his commandments, right? All right. So again, now we have Torah, okay? What is Torah? So this is a English word, or the English word law is the way that they translated it, right? And so Torah is actually not law. So I'm reading from ancienthebrew.org. It says, when we use the word law, we assume a certain meaning and concept of the word that is not present in the Hebrew scriptures. So it says the word Torah comes from the Hebrew root word yared. Oh shoot, sorry y'all. Sorry. I got some allergies right now. The word Torah comes from the root word, what does it say? Yara. It's the Strong's 3384. Yeah, Yara. Which means to propel through the air by a forward motion. The drizzle as throwing down of a water, to teach in the sense of throwing or pointing a finger in a straight line as the direction one is to walk. So think like literally that way, right? Teach, go that way. Sorry. Okay, so you got here kids in the background. It's my daughter. All right, it says this can be a flowing of an arrow from an archer's bow or the flowing of a finger to point out a direction. Nouns are derived from the verb by making one or two changes to the verb root. So let's see here. So essentially, it says the Hebraic definition of Torah is a set of instructions from a father to his children. Violation of these instructions are disciplined in order to foster obedience and train his children. Very nice. Violation of these instructions are disciplined in order to foster obedience and train his children. Notice how the word Torah is translated in the New International Version. Listen, my son, to your father's instruction, and do not forsake your mother's teaching, Torah. My son, do not forget my teaching, Torah, but keep my commands in your heart. Keep my charges in your heart. Notice again, the instruction always precedes the charges, okay? The instruction always precedes what the charge is and telling us what to guard. What is our duty, okay? The purpose of a parent's Torah is to teach and bring the children to maturity. If the Torah is violated out of disrespect or defiant disobedience, the child is punished. If the child desires to follow the instructions out of a loving obedience but falls short of the expectations, the child is commended for the effort and counseled on how to perform the instructions better the next time. Unlike Torah, law is a set of rules from a government and binding on a community. Violation of the rules requires punishment. With this type of law, there is no room for teaching. Either the law was broken with the penalty of punishment, or it was not broken. The Most High, our Heavenly Father, gives his children his Torah in the same manner as parents give their Torah to their children, not in the manner as a government does its citizens. So this is important, too, to understand. A lot of people always just say, like, it's just the father, right? So essentially, if you're thinking about the law, right, if there is something to be fulfilled to 100%, 100% fulfillment needs to be done when it comes down to how the Most High says, you must do this and not do this. And if it's not done the entire way, and correct way, there should be an immediate punishment coming through, right? So imagine if the Levitical priesthood wasn't there. Just talking about Israel alone. Imagine if the Levitical priesthood wasn't there. As soon as somebody did something wrong, it's raps, right? And you notice that even still, when you read Leviticus, there were things that that people did that still got them stoned to death, because he still had to set apart the evil from the good, right? But if there was no Levitical priesthood, it would have been over. That's why it also mentions how when Enoch, he was a sign of repentance, because the flood was coming. But the Most High still sent his instructions through Enoch in that specific time period for people to gain an understanding and to repent also, and to follow after the Most High's instructions. And therefore also Noah was able to grow up and understand those things and take it with him, so that way they could also, when the flood happens, Noah is going to give his instructions to his children. Okay, so these things are still there from the very, very, very beginning. All right, but if there are no priests, if there's no middle, there's no middle between man and the Father, it is over. There is no way, because no one can fulfill to the letter of what is required. So, if the Son was created, is the first begotten of the Father, wouldn't that make the Son the middle between man, even from the beginning? Why would Shabbat be held in the heavens? Why would Shabbat be held in the heavens by the angels if the Son was never there? Because man has always failed from the very beginning, even with his instructions. Now, is that to say that the Father is not merciful and the Father is not gracious and things like that? He absolutely is. But, like it says here, unlike Torah, law is a set of rules from a government and a binding on a community. Violation of the rules require punishment. With this type of law, there is no room for teaching. Either the law was broken with the penalty of punishment or it was not broken. Okay? So if there is no middle, it is over. There's no reason to create man. There's a scripture somewhere that it says that although man was created in his image, that he knew the end of man. Like he knew our end, which is basically evil. Because if there's no instruction, he doesn't give us the set apart portion of raising us the right way, then we're going to always turn out evil. So essentially, when you think about that, like there has to be within this law that he's set for us. If he's merciful, he's going to bring his Torah, his instruction of how not to get blinded in the punishment of the law that requires 100% to be done. So there has to be a merciful portion within it, right? And it's that's the thing. It's like he keeps talking about the Father. It's just very interesting. Like we have to understand how to truly be humble and meek with all of this, and understand no one can just approach the Father. You cannot just approach the Father without there have been something in the middle as like a filter for you to even approach it. The Levitical priests, no one in the tribe of Israel could go to inside the tabernacle. Same thing for the temple that Solomon built. No one could go into the most set apart places. Even later on down the line, you guys go research it for the priesthood. The Zadokite priests, they were even separate from the Levitical priests at that specific time, and they were allowed to go into further, closer to him, because they stood for something during a certain time that the other priests actually fell from. So notice that you still have a middle. Okay, and let me see if I can pull this up. Yes, connection to 7th and 8th day. Always connected, sister. Always. So let me see. Tribe setup tabernacle. Let me see if I can pull up an image. Okay. So this is one of the images. Okay, so this is one of the images. Tabernacle constructed. So you see all the Israelites, right? You see all where they are. Okay. Now you see the entrance right here. Okay. It literally says Moses and Aaron. Obviously the Levitical priests would be in there because the Levites were coming from Aaron's line. But you notice it says Levites here. Levites, like the Levites were always, it's showing they're on all the sides. All the sides of the people. Like you couldn't have anybody from the other tribes even come towards that area without the Levites, because the Levites were the only ones allowed to do so. Let's see what else we have, if there's another picture of it. Let's see. It's a lot of pictures out there, by the way, so let's see here. This is kind of like a general picture. So imagine you being in one of these tribes in that time, and literally, like, you're always looking. You're always looking in a direction where the set apart, where the Most High is, where his presence is. But then you get to see other people going inside of this tabernacle, but you're not worthy enough because you're not a Levite. Right? But again, even outside of you being worthy, you still have these same, your brothers and your sisters, or your brothers, I'm sorry. You still have these people these Levites had to be in the middle between you and the Most High. Like literally another man had to be in between you, another man that could easily fail and easily not fulfill the letter of the law, the requirements, could have easily failed on your behalf. And what would that mean for you? What would that mean for you? Tough. Sorry. So, again, it's very important to really realize that and understand, like, where are we right now? How are we able to not do sacrifices? How are we able to not be required to fulfill exactly all these things? And we're going to talk about it later on down this line in this study. I'm going to just show you guys just some images of the 613 laws. I'm going to just show you, just so you can see that. And of course, please go study it for yourselves as well. But just for you to see, something had to happen for us to literally be right here, for me to sit here and be teaching you guys some stuff like this, while myself is still learning and growing and trying to still be as perfect as I can be, still falling short here and there, still literally bathing in his discipline and his mercy and his grace. And I'm still alive right now. Thank the Most High. And you're still alive right now watching this. Something has had to have happened. Okay? So, again, that's going to be another study later on. We're going to literally look at the priesthood. Okay? But essentially, when you think about law versus Torah, it's so important to understand why the Torah, why we actually say Torah, why we actually have the Torah in our hearts, why it's a Torah of truth, why we are looking to fulfill his charges, ordinances, statutes, judgments. This is the mindset and the heart set that we should have. And yeah, like I said, it's just foundation, so I just wanted to just make sure I mention it. Let's continue. And we are almost finished here. All right. So the narrow road. So 2nd Esdras, chapter 7. Verse 2 through 25. So I'm not going to read the whole entire thing. I'm going to read the main portion where he talks about the narrow road. Okay? So let me get another translation. All right. So chapter 7. It says, "When I had finished speaking these words, the angel who had sent to me on the former nights was sent to me again. He said to me, 'Rise, Ezra, and listen to the words that I have come to speak to you.' I said, 'Speak, my Lord.' And he said to me, 'There is a sea set in a wide expanse, so that it is broad and vast, but it has an entrance set in a narrow place, so that it is like a river. If any one then wishes to reach the sea, to look at it, or to navigate it, how can he come to the broad part unless he passes through the narrow part? Another example, there is a city built and set on a plain, and it is full of good things. But the entrance to it is narrow and set in a precipitous place, so that there is fire on the right hand and deep water on the left. There is only one path lying between them, and that is between the fire and the water, so that only one man can walk upon that path. If now that city is given to a man for an inheritance, how will the heir receive his inheritance unless he passes through the danger set before him?' Ezra said, 'He cannot, Lord.' And he said to me, 'So also is Israel's portion. For I made the world for their sake, and when Adam transgressed my statutes, what had been made was judged.'" Okay? So again, let's go back to what statutes mean. All right? So Adam disobeyed the Most High statutes. All right? And statute is a condition, civil enactment for the Most High, or an ordinance. But also, it says, give me 1 second. I'm sorry. the statute T. I'm trying to get the definition that we already looked up from 119 Ministries earlier. So it's what's prescribed for us to do, a boundary set. Okay, and it says it does sound like commands or orders that's given, and they actually are. They're specific decrees. Okay, so going back to, so I can put this, make sure this is in the study. Going back to our slide where we see in the beginning, where is that at? Okay, so all of these things that you see in Genesis 1 through 2, Jubilees 2 through 3, and Jasher 1, you can see these commands in these statutes. So now we have more understanding, right, to be able to look at these different things that were given in the beginning. So again, specific decrees. There are specific decrees, commands, charges that are given for us to follow. All right, and they have boundaries set. So the Most High said, don't eat something. What's going to happen if you do? I'm going to tell you, you're going to die. Right? So again, let's go back to 2nd Esdras. It says, so also is Israel's portion, for I made the world for their sake, and when Adam transgressed my statutes, what had been made was judged. Here's the word again, judged, because judgment has to come with statutes and commandments and ordinances. And so the entrances of this world were made narrow and sorrowful and toilsome. They are few and evil, full of dangers and involved in great hardships. But the entrances of the greater world are broad and safe and really yield the fruit of immortality. Therefore, excuse me. Therefore, unless the living pass through the difficult and vain experiences, they can never receive those things that have been reserved for them. Okay. It's very, very, very key. Like it gives a little bit more detail for understanding the narrow road, right? Because essentially they were broad at first when they weren't doing any evil, and then now they have to be super narrow, and of course it comes with strife. But essentially at the end of that narrow road is going to be broad, beautiful, righteous, like perfect portion that we will be able to inherit for those who make it. All right. So, moving on, it's very key to understand that narrow road and why we need to understand how to guard his charges and what it actually means. So the 10 Commandments, okay? This is just, obviously the 10 Commandments are always going to be the general portion of what always comes out as his commands, right? The 3 pillars are not outside of any command, statute, ordinance, and judgment. They're always there. The 3 pillars are fear, wisdom, and righteousness. Okay? They're always going to be there. There is never a time where he hasn't embedded those things into his instructions. Never. They're all attached. Okay? So my question is, which we're going to see in the next slide, where did Israel fall short? A lot of times it's only talked about that they fell short in idolatry, and that's not true. That's not the only thing that they fell short in. It's idolatry within it, but at the same time, you have the whole basis of Israel falling short on all 3 of the pillars. And let's see if I can find it on my slides. Goodness gracious. Come on, IG. No. Wait, y'all. Hold on. Let's see. Okay, there it is. Okay, so we're going to read a little bit. These aren't like full chapters, nothing like that. It's just simply a way that I just kind of divided it just to see what each category, based off of scripture where it says Israel failed, and for it to be easier to notice that they did fall short of all of the pillars. So we got within fear. So we're going to start with fear first, because Sirach says fear is the root of all wisdom. All right, so fear. We got Judges 3.7. Chapter 3, verse 7. And chapter 8, verse 34. It says, and the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Most High, forgetting the Most High, their Elohim, and serving the Baals and the Asherah. Okay, so there is no fear. There's no reverence. There's a trembling within truly revering the Most High, not to do wrong. There's a scripture from a place I'm going to share later, talks about fear is twofold. So if you want to do good, fear the Most High and you will do good. If you want to stay away from evil and not do it, fear the Most High and you won't do the evil. Okay, so you see that there's no twofold fear here. Okay, and then it says in 8:34 Judges, it says, and the people of Israel did not remember the Most High, who had rescued them from the hand of all their enemies on every side. So not only did you see his power, you also forgot what he did. And that's in Judges. It also talks about how the children, the next generation, would come up and they would be super evil because they didn't pass down the understanding and the stories and things like that. Judges is full of scriptures like that. But he always was saving them, always merciful, over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Psalm 78:42, it says, they did not remember his power or the day when he redeemed them from the foe. So this is the same sense. This is in the same sense for us, knowing that not just the 10 Commandments, but it's his instruction, his entire instruction. So that's why I don't agree saying Torah is the first 5 books. It's more sensible to say Pentateuch, first 5 books. But the Torah is his instructions that are all connected together, that you can find, so that way you're able to understand how to keep the charge that is given to you, how to be Natsar and Shamar, and to watch over it and be a watchman fully. Not just saying, oh, I got these things that are given to me, I just got to do it. No, where's your heart at? Where's your mind at? Where's your spirit at? Because that's what he's literally looking at that all the time. He's not going to count it for righteousness when it doesn't have fear, wisdom, and the righteousness connected to it. He's not going to count that as anything. That's actually going to be on Matsima's accusations, and he's going to say, well, yeah, this person did all this, and you did this, and he didn't do any of this in the fear of you, Abba. He didn't have any wisdom. He just did it on his own and thought that was going to be cool for as righteous. It has to be connected to the pillars. It has to be connected to where your heart and your mindset, where your tabernacle is in purity unto him. That's why he says, I'm coming back for those who are in spirit and in truth. All right. So Psalm 78:42, it says, they did not remember his power or the day when he redeemed them from the foe. Imagine he literally showing you, I got you. Your enemy is nothing to me. And then you turn him back to the enemy? It's just disrespectful. It's just that's beyond just, for us, it's just, man. Imagine if there is no middle, there's no atonement, there's no covering, it's over. It's over. Like, that's like super disrespectful. Nehemiah 9:17. They refused to obey and were not mindful of the wonders that you performed among them, but they stiffened their neck and appointed a leader to return to their slavery in Egypt. But you are a Elohim, ready to forgive, gracious and merciful, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love, and did not forsake them. Man, do we not deserve it. But look at him. Look at it. It's just beautiful. But it says it here. They refused to obey you. Refused to. There's no fear when you refuse to obey his instructions and keep them as a charge that's given to you. And Natsar and Shamar over, be watchful and keep them and guard them with your whole entire life, your whole being, like a watchman, trying to keep his tabernacle, his tower safe, so that way the enemy does not enter. They were stiff-necked, and they refused to obey, and they were not mindful. And they appointed another leader to return to their slavery in Egypt. Man, talk about, and that's why he says, if Matthew 5, the ones who are not merciful will not see the Most High. Because you can't, like, look how much mercy he gives us, and we can't even give mercy to other people. That includes the ones who are evil. Yes, we know they're evil, but you got to pray for them. It's an easy prayer. It's an easy prayer. Just pray for them. Even if they are cooked, like, you know, if it's wraps for them, pray for them. Because there's a time when we can't pray for anybody. And that's in 2nd Ezra chapter 7 when it talks about the judgment. It says there's final judgment day. You can't pray for no one. It's over. But continuing, a couple more scriptures for fear where Israel fell short. This is why we always should look into more and not just keep the same things we've always heard. Israel fell from idolatry, blah, 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 blah. It was always more than that. Always. Psalm 106:7. Our fathers, when they were in Egypt, did not consider your wondrous works. They did not remember the abundance of your steadfast love, but rebelled by the sea, at the Red Sea. Interesting. Interesting. All right, Baruch, chapter 4. Why are you hating? Laptop. I don't know what American edition, whatever. Baruch chapter 4. So it says, it's talking about wisdom in the chapter before it. And it says, this is the book of the commandments of the Most High and the law that is forever. All that keep it shall come to life, but they that have forsaken it to death. Return, O Jacob, and take hold of it. Walk in the way by its brightness in the presence of the light thereof. Let's see here. It says, verse 6, you have been sold to the Gentiles for your destruction, but because you provoked the Most High to wrath, you are delivered to your adversaries. For you have provoked him who made you, the eternal Elohim, offering sacrifice to devils and not to him. For you have forgotten him, Elohim, who have brought you up, and you have grieved Jerusalem that nursed you. For she saw the wrath of the Most High coming upon you, and she said, give ear, all you that dwell near Zion, for the Most High has brought upon me great mourning. For I have seen the captivity of my people, of my sons, of my daughters, which the Eternal hath brought upon them. For I nourished them with joy, but I sent them away with weeping and mourning. Let no man rejoice over me, a widow, a desolate. I am forsaken of many for the sins of my children, because they departed from the law of the Most High. So notice, if you guys go read 2nd Ezra chapter 2, there is a chapter 1 and 2. There's a speaker that literally starts speaking from chapter 1 to chapter 2 at a certain point before Ezra does. And he talks about redeeming Jerusalem, redeeming his bride, redeeming the mother of these children. Straight up. 2nd Ezra chapter 1 and 2. And Esdras literally sees that it's the Son of the Most High redeeming his bride, redeeming Jerusalem and his people. So it's interesting when you connect it to when the Son returned, or when he's born, and et cetera, he talks about that he came for the lost sheep of Israel. He's fulfilling his portion, and he only could cleanse Jerusalem by his blood. He only could cleanse his children by his blood. It's so connected. If he didn't come, if he didn't do any of that, we'd be cooked right now. It's over. Like it's just over. There's no way for us to literally be here and expect that we receive any type of eternal life or anything without, again, there's a middle. There's a middle right there in between us and the Father. He's always provided that. So that was Bruce chapter 4. And then I have, again, Numbers 14:11. We are going on 2 hours, bro. Wow. It's almost done. It's inevitable. So we'll go to wisdom now. It didn't even feel like 2 hours, but sheesh. It's all good. All right, so wisdom. So it says in Deuteronomy 4:6, it says, "And you shall observe and fulfill them in practice. For this is your wisdom and understanding in the sight of nations, that hearing all these precepts, they may say, Behold, a wise and understanding people, a great nation." Okay, so literally, the Most High is already saying that this word, these commandments, these things that I'm giving you, literally is filled with wisdom. If you observe them, you have to put them into practice to fulfill them. This is the wisdom and understanding in the sight of all the other nations, because that's the way they are set apart from all the things that they do. So he tells them that, and then you get to Baruch chapter 2 and through 1 through 4. So Baruch chapter 2 through chapter 4, 1 through 4. Please read that on your own. It literally will talk about that if Israel would have dwelled in wisdom, that they would have been safe in the land that they were given. And that way that they forsook the fountain of wisdom. Okay, so again, another of Israel's shortcomings in the pillars, that they literally forsook wisdom. All right, it's not just idolatry. It's not just that, you guys. It's not just that. It's always been deeper. Jeremiah 8:7 through 13. So you have them. You have Jeremiah talking about reform your ways and your actions. I will let you live in this place. Do not trust in the deceptive words. So again, you have wisdom, that they were supposed to follow his word. Sirach chapter 24, you see another portion where wisdom is speaking. And it says that all the things that are within wisdom are the things of the Torah, of his instructions. Okay? And that obviously is not without fear and righteousness and all of the other things that come from the fruits of wisdom. Okay? Which is within your character. So they didn't have all these different things. It was certain people who had them, but not all. You got Ezekiel 20:13. So this is still under wisdom. Where did Israel fall short in wisdom? So it says, "Yet the people of Israel rebelled against me in the wilderness. They did not follow my decrees, but rejected my laws," or you can say my Torah, my instructions, by which the person who obeys them will live. They utterly desecrated my Sabbaths. So I said I would pour out my wrath on them and destroy them in the wilderness. That's crazy. They utterly desecrated my Sabbaths. The same Sabbath that is observed by the angels. Just, man. So they didn't follow his wisdom that he gave them. Because it already says in Deuteronomy 4:6 that the wisdom was within the laws. Right? So they utterly rejected it. They rejected wisdom and chose their own. 2 Kings 18:12. Talk about stiff neck, man. We gotta get out of that. 2 Kings 18:12, it says, "This happened because they had not obeyed the Most High, but had violated his covenant." Violated it. All that Moses, the servant of the Most High, commanded. They neither listened to the commands nor carried them out. So they didn't listen to the wisdom nor carry out the wisdom. Because by carrying out the wisdom, you will have fruits of righteousness coming through it. And therefore, if you want to do good, you have fear, right? You want to do good, fear the Most High, and you will do it. They did not have fear. They did not have wisdom. The righteousness wasn't coming out from them. And then, of course, I listed Ezekiel 20 as well for you guys to just read the whole chapter. So now we move on to righteousness. All right? Righteousness. Where did Israel fall short in righteousness? So I think I've already read that about Jerusalem sending away her children. You have Isaiah 58, and it talks about the true fasting. Okay, sorry y'all for the background noise. My bad. True fasting. So it talks about. It says, verse 2: "For day after day they seek me out. They seek me out. They seem eager to know my ways, as if they were a nation that does what is right and has not forsaken the commandments of its God, of its Elohim. They ask me for just decisions and seem eager for the Most High to come near them." It says, "Why have we fasted," they say, "and you have not seen it? Why have we humbled ourselves that you have not noticed?" So he basically talks about the fast, what a pure fast is, and how they were going about stuff thinking that it was right. And it obviously wasn't. So that's one thing. And then Isaiah 49:6 is a good one. 2 Samuel 23, 3-7. So it talks about, says, "The Most High of Israel spoke and said to me, when one rules over people in righteousness, when he rules in the fear of the Most High, he is like the light of morning at sunrise, on a cloudless morning, like the brightness after rain that brings grass from the earth. If my house were not right with the Most High, surely he would not have made me an everlasting covenant." So you guys can read that on your own, obviously, to see also where it literally says, when one rules over people in righteousness, when he rules in the fear of the Most High, he is like the light of the morning. So again, the pillars. If we obey and follow these pillars, and the things that are within the pillars, with his instructions within these pillars, then we have his light. Okay, so that's where Israel fell short. And therefore, idolatry was the unrighteousness, the fruit of unrighteousness that came from them from disobeying his instructions that are attached directly to these three pillars. Therefore, we are trying to do the very opposite of the unrighteousness that they engaged in, by understanding how to truly walk in his instructions within these three pillars. So the foundations are always still there. Always. It's always been the purpose of anything that comes out of this account, is how do we walk in the righteous ways? How do we walk in wisdom? How do we walk in fear? So last slide here. How to approach the Big Four. So the Big Four again is the commandments, statutes, the judgments, the ordinances. So again, please re-look at those things, review it so you understand it a lot more. So the mindset, heart set, and spirit set on how we approach it, right? The Proverbs 3-5 is very, very awesome to read. So please read that. I'm going to be reading that all throughout the week. But notice how it reads, okay? And this, how it reads, is how we should approach when we're seeing that there's a commandment or any of the Big Four, right? Even outside Deuteronomy and Exodus, right? We're seeing throughout the whole word When we're identifying an instruction, how do we approach it? So Proverbs 3, it starts out with saying, "My son, do not forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commandments. For length of days and years of life and peace they will add to you. Let not steadfast love and faithfulness forsake you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart." What does that sound like we read earlier? Deuteronomy chapter 6. So you will find favor and good success in the sight of Most High and man. Trust in him with all your heart. So things like this, you see, it's attached directly to his instructions, to his commands, to his ordinances. Okay? So you have Proverbs 3 through 5 to read. Okay? Chapter 4 starts out with, "Hear, O sons, a father's instruction, and be attentive that you may gain insight." So insight is a portion of the spirit of counsel, right? Of understanding. "For I give you good precepts. Do not forsake my teaching." So, again, it says, "When I was a son with my father, tender, the only one in the sight of my mother, he taught me and said to me, let your heart hold fast my words, keep my commandments and live. Get wisdom, get insight, do not forget and do not turn away from the words of my mouth." So again, you guys, this is how we approach his commandments. We can't just follow his commandments and then have no fear, no wisdom, no true righteousness, all embedded into our heart, into our very tabernacle. Okay. Let's see here. And again, chapter 5, it starts out with, "My son, be attentive to my wisdom. Incline your ear to my understanding, that you may keep discretion." Keep, that nasar, that shamar is right in it. "Your lips may guard knowledge." Guard knowledge. Verse 7 says, "O my sons, listen to me. Do not depart from the words of my mouth. Keep your way far from her. And do not go near the door of her house." And it's talking about the earlier in the verse 3, talks about the lips of a forbidden woman that drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil, and that her ways, her steps go towards death. Okay, so obviously it's the opposite of his instructions. It's the wrong things. It's the evil things. Okay. Again, so how do we approach the big four as well? So we got Proverbs 3 through 5, helps you with your heart, your mindset, and your spirit. Then you have the feast days. So everything. I told you guys this in the last study. You may have heard it, but I had a dream, and I was already studying the luminaries and things like that. The Most High told me, like his voice legit said, everything is about the 8th day. There is not one feast disconnected from the 8th day. That's the 7th and 8th day, but ultimately the 8th day. All of them. Okay? So I was pointing to some stuff on my story as well. You got to check it out in Jubilees. I forgot exactly where it is. I know it's in chapter 49, but it's in another place too. But it talks about how the Passover was to be kept inside of the gates inside Jerusalem. There's another area where it talks about Shavuot or something like that. But some of these feasts, it does say that they weren't supposed to be outside of Jerusalem. So it's very interesting to kind of understand like how we're keeping it. And the Epistle of Barnabas is a good read to make sure you divide it correctly as well. But it talks about literally the Son of the Most High will return on that 7th day and usher us into the 8th day so we can keep everything perfectly the way it's supposed to be. So again, you still have that middle portion being there. So the next portion, how to approach the big four. So the 2 greatest commands. So I saw this on a post from somebody, but it's also, I just found it on Google as well. This is a very good graphic. So you have the 2 greatest commands that the Yahshua HaMashiach also spoke on, but obviously it was still found in the OT, right? So you shall love the Most High with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your whole body. And you shall love the Most High, your Elohim, And I'm not sure. Hold on, let me make sure I get the other scripture just for the study. That's messed up. I didn't know it was going to cut it off. I want to read it verbatim. Let me see here. Well, you guys, you're going to have to find it. I totally forgot exactly what the scripture that's from because I can't see it on here. But either way, it's not going to be different in the New Testament. So you have, and the second is like it to the other one. So love your neighbor as yourself. Okay. Let's see here. So that one is Matthew 22:39. Let me make sure. I know I can pull it up. Okay. And that's connected to Leviticus 19:18. You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against any of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Most High. So there it is. So this is a very good little graphic here. So it shows the Ten Commandments under the two greatest, basically, and it shows all these other scriptures that's connected, primarily OT, where it connects to these different things. So you understand there's commandments, you understand there's judgments, ordinances, statutes, right? So you can find this graphic there. I can always send it to you guys if you need it. Just let me know. But this is the thing. Please do your own research to evaluate the 613 laws. Okay? I didn't get to make it smaller, but this is from, I'm not sure. I'll post it on a story after this, to be honest. But it shows the 613 laws and is divided. Okay, so it goes the Most High, the Torah, Temple of the Priest, so all these different things. So just kind of look at it just a little bit. All these little different things that we're supposed to quote unquote do, right? See here, sacrifices, vows, ritual purity. It's crazy. Look at all of this stuff, man. Guilt offerings. Festivals, community, concerning animal sacrifices and all that. It's a lot. It's not even all of it. Look at all this stuff. Eat this, boil, eat that, not this, that. Yeah, the dietary laws, obviously. All of this stuff. So, just understanding, let's see here, where we are now, right? So, understanding, like, if a lot of people say follow the commands, but then it's like you have certain people. I was talking to a sister about this. You have certain people that will sit there and say, well, this command isn't there, and this isn't there, blah, 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 but have no explanation for it ultimately, right? So essentially we have the easiest way to understand how we are to engage our heart, mind, and spirit set to understanding the big two greatest commandments, which all things hang on, right? And just truly just being able to understand it, like I was saying, with Proverbs 3 through 5, just having more of a heart, you guys, just having more of a spirit attached to this stuff rather than just saying it so like vaguely, and also not doing it for show, okay, but doing it for truly understanding that this is a part of your judgment, We all will take upon our own righteousness or unrighteousness at the end of it all. And so this is just some of the ways you could approach it. Some foundational ways to approach it. And ultimately, we'll get into more details into the commandments over time. But just wanted to make sure I just put this here to set some foundations for you guys to look into. And that was pretty much it, y'all. That was it. So I appreciate you guys for tuning in. If you guys have any questions or anything that you wanted to talk about, you guys can always contact me. But I appreciate everything that you guys have, you guys who support, the studies and all of that. I appreciate you guys and the conversations we have. Definitely always edifying. Continue to make your election sure with fear and trembling, and working at your salvation with fear and trembling, and make your election sure, and just constantly making sure you're studying. But not just studying just to be smarter than the next person or whatever. Just really keep these things in your heart. Really live it out. Purify your temple. Live it out in the right ways. And continue to just truly just grow in the righteous ways, y'all. And that's about it. I will see you guys next time.